You're listening to Convenience Matters, brought to you by NACS. Whether it's for food, fuel, drinks, or snacks, about half of the U.S. population shops at a convenience store every day. We'll talk about what we see at stores and what the future may hold for our industry.
You heard that? Maybe relax with one of those? We're going to talk about some trends in beer and what it means for convenience retailers. Welcome to Convenience Matters. My name's Jeff Lenard with NACS.
And I'm Carolyn Schnare, also with NACS. And today we're going to talk, as Jeff said, about beer, one of the subjects we both really enjoy, as does our guest, who is Lester Jones, the Chief Economist with the National Beer Wholesalers Association. Thanks for joining us, Lester.
Thank you for having me, Carolyn and Jeff. It's a pleasure.
So my very first question to you is, can you tell us what NBWA, what you do, who you represent, and who you are?
Oh, well, I'll start with who I am first because I know that the best, I think. I'm Lester Jones. I'm the Chief Economist of the National Beer Wholesalers Association, also known as the NBWA, not the NWBA, which is the National Women's Basketball Association. We are the National Beer Wholesalers Association. And I'm the economist. Formerly, before the NBWA, I worked for a place called the Beer Institute, which is the trade association for the brewers, Anheuser-Busch, Molson Coors, Heineken, Constellation, but those guys that make the beer. And now I'm working for the guys that distribute the beer.
So you know beer.
Yes, I do. I've been around beer for a while, and I'm pretty familiar with all the channels of retail trade, including convenience. And, we look at the convenience channel in a special way in the beer industry because it is unique and different. It's different than grocery stores, and it's different than packaged liquor stores, and it's different from bars and restaurants and stadiums. And all these channels are very unique to the beer industry. And, as a beer distributor, when you're out in the marketplace and you're driving around all these accounts, convenience stores are critical. They're important. And we certainly appreciate all the business that we get to transact with our convenience store partners.
In looking at the setup, we talked about things like people were eating out more. I know the Commerce Department said since 2015, people have been spending more money going out than more money for groceries. And big trend on experience and sports and being out. And also that there were some cracks in beer sales compared to some other types of adult beverages. And all three of those trends, I'm sorry to use the word, are disrupted significantly by what's happened over in 2020 with the pandemic, where sports events, concerts, bars, those types of things are more difficult to go out. And meanwhile, we've seen the trend that beer has picked up in terms of cans and in terms of multi-packs. Are those the trends that you're seeing on a broader level also out in the marketplace?
Oh, very good question. So, yeah, there's a lot to talk about. We clearly, from 2010 through 2020, we were in this just vibrant economy where, like you said, the experiential channel was just so important to the beer market. And the experiential channel was, this idea of going out and interacting in the marketplace and at retail and in new places. We had movie theaters with alcohol. We had laundromats with alcohol. We actually started seeing even some convenience formats that started offering food and alcohol and in the same format. We saw grocery stores that were typically go buy your groceries and go home. All of a sudden, they have beer gardens and wine bars and sake bars and mead bars and kombucha bars, and it's just crazy things were happening in this economy. And week 12 of March 2020, it all came to an abrupt halt, a hard stop, a brick wall. Call it whatever you want. I used the word paroxysm the other day at a meeting, and I got yelled at by someone for using crazy words. But it was just a convulsion, a paroxysm that just brought everything to a standstill. And when we look at the beer market right now, I see it in kind of 2020 in 3 distinct segments. I have weeks 1 through 12, which was pre-COVID, where everything was kind of going along fine. We have this week 12 through kind of 24, 25, where the country was very much in a hard kind of lockdown, almost frozen state of pantry rushing and staying at home. And then after weeks 24, 25, things started opening up. People started venturing out a little bit more. There was a new word that I learned over the weekend was security fatigue. People are getting fatigued of being too secure. So security fatigue set in. People started moving out more. So there's these three distinct time periods in 2020 that we have to look at. And there are dramatic shifts in what people were buying, what they were consuming, and where they were shopping. So if you focus in on just weeks 12 through 24, on-premise was shut down. Bars, taverns were closed. And draft beer in kegs that you buy in stadiums and restaurants makes up for about 10% of the U.S. beer business. Well, all of a sudden, that vessel that was used to bring beer to so many people was no longer an option. So that means all the consumption for people that wanted beer had to focus in on a can or a bottle, right? Only two options now. And then, people were buying, they were scared to go out. So they were focused in on brands that they were familiar with, as well as large packet sizes so that they could take those familiar brands, take them home, and they didn't have to go back out. So that was kind of weeks 12 through 24. But once weeks 24, 25, people started going out more, and we actually started seeing draft beer start trickle back out into the economy, into the marketplace. So we saw bars and restaurants start to open up around the country in different parts of the country, depending on where you were, of course. But so that started alleviating some of that pressure off of those familiar brands and those familiar large pack sizes. So it's been a very crazy roller coaster ride as the beer industry reflects actually what's happening in the marketplace. So yes, to answer your question, we've seen an abrupt stop in that experiential channel. We've seen consumers go back to, time-tested and true places to shop, like grocery stores, convenience stores, and liquor stores. We've seen them turn to their familiar brands and the larger pack size, so they didn't have to do as much shopping. But that's kind of fading away on us as we've started to venture out more, and people are starting to go out more. A recent stat that I saw last week was that air traffic was about 50% of where it was. On-premise traffic is starting to claw back to maybe 20% of where it was. So we are in a very slow recovery that we expect to go well into 2021 as we start regaining our zones of safety and start feeling more safe out in the marketplace.
So you used the word claw. That gave me an opportunity to start off my next question. But two parts to this. And one is convenience stores, 83% of the items they sell are immediate consumption. So if they buy beer, it's cold beer because they're going to go somewhere and it's going to be consumed within the hour. Not in the car once they get somewhere. But what we've seen with the weeks, I love the way you broke it into different time frames. We've seen a lot more in suitcases of beer. Warm, because it's not necessarily for now. It's for, hey, I'm out. I may as well get everything I need to minimize my exposure, maximize my trip. At the same time, we mentioned Claw and White Claw. How does that fit into the beer discussion? Because it's difficult to not see a 12-pack out front, warm, not out front of the building, but right up by the register at a lot of stores now. And that's just been huge with the seltzer and some of those other products that you don't normally think of as traditional beers.
Right. So, I guess beer is kind of a victim of its own success in the world of innovation. We, as an industry, brewers in particular, have done really good at it, just growing this category from a pale light lager to something that is just beyond just that basic lager drink or pale ale that you consume. All these innovations, all these styles, all these brewers and and styles of beers that you can consume. And the FMB, this flavored malt beverage category that kind of started back when we first had Zima. You remember Zima?
Oh, Zima.
The wheat gin and tonic.
Yeah, we started with Zima, and then we went to like Sky Vodka and Bacardi Ice, and we grew this category, and here we are, now faced with this category, which is seltzers, which is such the antithesis of what we had when we had the height of the craft beer boom, where it was all about full flavor. It was all about full-bodied, full-flavored, high alcohol content beer. And we kind of took it as far as we could take it. We took it into crazy fruits, variations on hazy, juicy IPAs. We went double IPAs. We came up with all these crazy things, and the pendulum always swings. I mean, the pendulum is always going to swing from far left to far right. And for me, I look back, like I said earlier, I sit on the sidelines and I watch these, like a tennis match, watching the ball go back and forth. And I'm watching it. I'm like, well, it's kind of not a surprise that we are suddenly in a marketplace where everyone wants something as simple as a seltzer water with a little bit of flavor spike and a little bit of alcohol spike. So remember, White Claws are around 5%, and some of the other seltzers around 4.5%. Most of the seltzers don't go above 5%. I don't think I'm aware of any seltzer that goes above 5%. And they are the complete opposite of a full-bodied, experimental kind of concoction of craft beers that have all these complex things to it. We swing back down to this very simple. So the success of White Claw, the success of Truly or Corona Seltzer or Bud Light Seltzer, and now all these extra new people that are entering the market. I hear that Topo Chico wants in, and all that soda guys are thinking about experimenting with this as well. That it's kind of refreshing to go from very complex to very simple, and it's not as surprising that the consumers are like, okay, I'm just going to take a break. Let me try this out. How far is it going to go? I get that question every day. I think it goes as far as the consumer says, okay, that was fun. It was easy. It's refreshing. I don't have to think that much. But yeah, maybe we swing back a little bit to something that a little bit reasonable, where people do prefer to have a little balance of experimental beers with much more flavor and a lot more complexities to them. But they all enjoy their seltzers as well. They'll find a balance between all of that.
One of the things I noticed with the seltzers, because my husband used to home brew, but we haven't been doing that a lot lately. It's easier to buy it. But a lot of the IPAs and whatnot. But the seltzers, I have been buying more of those. And like, I think personally, I'm not a girly girl, but like I was like, oh, seltzers. But I thought it was interesting how the can sizes have. I don't want to say like. I don't know what, but you probably have a better way of saying this, but the can sizes have shrunk. Like they're like this long, skinny cans. So now I had to buy all new. So I have been buying the seltzers. Now I have to buy all new koozies to hold the seltzer. But that's a trend I think probably aimed more towards women. And so
yes.
Are you seeing a lot more of that from a perspective of like stocking in terms of even with beer? Are you seeing a different demographic that folks are aiming towards?
Well, products like the FMB category, the flavored malt beverage category, or you may hear of it as the progressive adult beverages, PABs or FMBs, they have traditionally been very, very well balanced between female and male consumers. Whereas craft beer and the premium regular type beers were much more skewed to males. So it is a very refreshing outcome for the beer distributors and for the brewers to have a product line that is much more palatable to both males and females. Yes, the Truly cans, the White Claw cans do come in that slim 11.5 ounce. They're that slim can, which is definitely a female package. And if you look at some of the McUltra packages that also have those slim cans, and the Corona had a slim can out there as well. I mean, they fit in your hand a lot better, and they're a little more comfortable to hold on to. So it's a great opportunity, but I don't see it as having turned off the male consumer in any way. They still seem to be buying it. I have to admit, this is not a scientific observation. This is a non-scientific conclusion. It is my personal observation that when I'm walking through stores and watching what people buy, I'm kind of a stalker that way. I can't help myself. But I do I see the guys grab the hard seltzer package, and I see them grab, the Bud Light package as well, or the Coors or the Miller or whatever. They're buying both. They're grabbing both of them, and that's what you want. If you're a retailer and you have a customer walking in the door, you want him to have everything he needs, right? So, if it's a guy, he's going to grab both of them. Brilliant.
Now what about ciders? Like, is that do those are new? I've seen a lot more in cans, Crispin, and other, like, even localer ones. Is that something you see coming in maybe wintertime as the antithesis of seltzer?
You're very smart. Your alcohol beverage industry.
Thank you.
Because I was thinking that same thing last fall, because I watched the seltzers. I'm like, the seltzers are this nice, they're easier to drink. They're not beer. They're doing great over the summer. And I was really hoping for fall to be kind of the season of cider. And it didn't happen. Cider sales kind of continued to fall off through the fall last year. And that was very disappointing, because like you, I was kind of hoping to see that, because it made sense in my mind that that's what should happen. But it didn't happen in 2019. And ciders have kind of taken a back seat to seltzers right now, because they were, ciders did come out a while ago as kind of that, that's, the gluten-free alternative to beer for people that didn't want the malt-based product. And they were doing very well for a while, but I think seltzers kind of grabbed a disproportionate share of their spotlight, and it didn't come back in 2019. So, as we roll into the fall selling season for beer, because beer is very cyclical, and I'm sure your guys know this as well. So I'm preaching to the choir here that summer is the season for beer. Seltzer and ciders have done a good job at capturing that late third quarter and fourth quarter share from wine and spirits. So I'm a fan of ciders. I drink a cider every now and then. I love a snake bite. You take a little Pilsner, you take a little cider, you mix them together, you get a snake bite. I think that's a beautiful drink. I'm a fan. And I drink them to this day, and I will be drinking them, and through the rest of the year. So all of those products are still, we tend to get overzealous about that one trend that's really, busting out the doors, which is seltzer right now. But there's always going to be things like ciders, things like the premium lights. They're always going to be in the marketplace, and they're always going to be a demand. Always, but there will still be demand for them, and they're part of the basket that consumers want to purchase. So you're right. Keep those seltzers, keep the ciders in your back pocket. Remember that people still will want them, and especially as the summer months come to a close, they are a good fall beer and a good fall alternative to wine and spirits, and should absolutely be part of the consumer choices that we have.
A good complement to the pumpkin spice.
Exactly. And pumpkin beers are going to come strong. Yeah, sure.
And I have so many questions. We'll handle this another time about the non-alcohol beer trend, the hazy beer trend, the juicy beer trend. If you guys have no idea what any of that stuff is, we can sort that out maybe on the next time.
Absolutely.
But I do want to spend a little time on 2021 and what's the future hold. where we don't necessarily know what the future will be. When winter comes, what will restaurants be able to do? There may not be the same outdoor seating in some areas that are colder. Will there be more off-premise sales? That has been some experimentation with that. And I'm not asking for your crystal ball, but I'll take any thoughts that you have on that. But more thinking about how might things play out, and what are things that are pros and cons with what convenience stores might need to look at. Because we certainly don't want restaurants to be closed because nobody can eat outside because it's too cold. So what are all these things that you're looking at in terms of beer sales and how they might evolve over the next few years?
Wow. All right. You ready?
Yeah.
I always preface these kind of questions with, this is what I would like to happen, not what I think will happen, because there's what I want to really have happen. And then there's what I think will happen. I'm going to tell you what I would like to have happen. I would really like to see, a lot of the restrictions that have been placed on bars and restaurants to be lifted. I think what's happened is a few bad actors have really ruined it for the majority of good actors. The licensed establishments that are out there in the marketplace, the vast majority of them were doing a really good job at dealing with the current circumstances of the marketplace and being as safe as they could. A few bad actors came in and ruined it for them. And the policies that came out of that were, I think, just horrific and unacceptable and just bad. We are looking at, the bankruptcies of, tens of thousands of small independent bars that are on the verge of bankruptcy and will be gone if we don't change our policies very quickly in the next couple of months and reopen the hospitality industry as we know it. I would really like to see that happen and have people wake up to the economic consequences of, large scale bankruptcies and unemployment. And I hope every day that happens. What we're going to see, and what's probably most important for convenience store operators, is that, you guys are convenience stores. You have that ability to at least demonstrate to the marketplace that people can come in, they can grab food, they can grab a drink, and they can they can do that safely. And if there's any way that we could kind of come up with a way to present to show to policymakers and regulators that what's happening in the convenience space can actually happen in the bars and restaurant space, where people can interact with them just in a much more less intensive way in the past. So I do see hope for the remaining 2020 and into 2021 that we will actually become much more, flexible and accepting of working in this new world. Restaurants and bars, they're huge employers. I mean, millions and millions of people rely on the livelihood for that. And you need their tax revenue. The landlords need their rent money. Local governments need their taxing and their licensing fees, their tax revenue. And without those, we're going to have, a lot of economic consequences that are going to be long lasting. So the sooner we get through this and start accepting what we have to work with, the better off we will be. I'm going to stay optimistic and think that we can get through this a lot without as much, anxiety and economic harm, and start getting back on our feet in early 2021 would be a great outcome in my mind.
Amen to that. On all levels.
I mean, do you guys see that and you may want to talk about this or not, but convenience stores, I have seen a lot of convenience stores that have kind of expanded their almost restaurant offerings where, they're sit down there that you can, convenience stores could actually be a very good, example of how you can do this effectively and efficiently, especially if you have a lot more outdoor seating and, more spacious opportunity to do this kind of consumption. And you guys may actually be a good example for the industry.
Yeah, we do have examples, whether it's the Crowlers, Growlers, sit down, hang out. There's my favorite place in Bend, Oregon. They have something like 50 beers on tap. It's a gas station. It's the Shell station. And the idea of being more restaurants. So I think the big thing is thinking that there will be more channel blur. And as we all work our way through this, we're going to see more restaurants selling more packaged items or more items for delivery that you might not normally have thought of that would go for delivery. Same with convenience. And along with that goes responsible real ID age verification. And is that something that you're also looking more at?
Oh, yes, absolutely. NBWA, I'm the economist. I'm the analytical guy. I count the cases of beer and look at what consumers doing. But NBWA as an association in the advocacy field, we do a lot in terms of making sure that the real ID is out there and that people have tips and training, and that regardless of where you are, we need to make sure that the public policy of alcohol beverages remain intact. We've seen just so many laws change so quickly over the last 6 months about where you can drink, how much you can buy, payment forms and delivery and where you can drink. So much has changed so fast that, just keeping up with all the policy changes, whether at the local level or the state level, has become a huge challenge for the NBWA. And we're working every day to try to coordinate our state associations and our national work to just make sure the message gets out that we are in a very regulated industry. There's a lot of competing interests in there. And right now, things are getting pushed kind of to their limits. And I'm fully expecting in the near future that we will start getting some pushback on the deregulation and kind of cultural acceptance of alcohol in the post-COVID marketplace. And I think we need to be very conscientious of how that's going to evolve.
Yeah, that's its own topic, I think, which we'll need to save for another day. I mean, here in Virginia, that's where I live. We can get beer delivered from our local brewery or everything, which is, convenient. But ultimately, I can't imagine it'll work forever, or maybe it'll change and things. Maybe we get back together in 6 months or so and we see what happened. I think that's always a fun thing.
Yeah. And the thing is that I've said this in some of my past presentations is that we as a country are getting older. We have fewer and fewer legal drinking age consumers turning 21 every year, right? So if you kind of look at the demographics of the country, every year there are fewer and fewer new 21 and older consumers, right? So that just means we're getting older, and that you have just absolutely more legal drinking age consumers than you have underage drinkers. Right now, it's about 3 out of every 4 consumers in the country are over the age of 21, and 2/3 of them like to drink alcohol. So that is it's kind of a growing market in that it's expanding, and the availability is expanding, and the cultural acceptance of where you can buy it and how you can buy it and what you can do with it when you get your hands on it is growing, because we don't have the millennial generation is not under 21 anymore. We're not kind of keeping them out of that 21 plus world. They're fully engaged in the 21 plus world now, and they have, wants and desires that they are going to go out and fulfill, COVID or no COVID. So there's going to be a lot of tension in the regulatory world, and that's going to fall in convenience stores' laps as well, as you see local communities say, hey, you've gone way too far with this drinking in the streets and dropping beer off in people's homes. And, we're not checking IDs the way we should be, and we got to do something about this. And so that pushback may push back a lot harder, which may find yourself as a convenience store owner in an awkward position. So, yes, there's a lot. That's a whole nother talk that we should think about doing.
Well, we're working on that one, and we believe that if you're in the community, you need to be a responsible member of the community, and there's a way to sell products responsibly, and NACS is stepping up to the plate to make sure that we can do that.
Yep.
So, perfect way to end. And like I said, I'd love to talk about some of these other trends another time. And we started out the show by cracking open the sound of a beer. It could have been a non-alcoholic beer, so it could be 9 a.m, it could be whatever time, because that is a big trend now. And we'll talk a little bit about some of those next time we have you on, Lester, because we would like to have you on again.
Well, I'd love to come back and chat with you guys. It's certainly a good time for us to do this.
Well, thank you for joining us today, Lester, and thank you all for listening to Convenience Matters.
Convenience Matters is brought to you by NACS and produced in partnership with Human Factor. For more information, visit convenience.org.